The night it all collapsed was quiet, not the kind of quiet that soothes, but the stillness before a storm. Mia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the bank app on her phone. The numbers didn't make sense. Savings, $12. Checking, $357. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Where did it all go?" Just 3 months ago, she was on top of the world. A marketing lead at a rising startup in Chicago, a boyfriend who made her laugh every morning, a new downtown apartment with views of the river. Everything had felt like it was finally coming together. At 30, she thought she had outrun the mess of her 20s, the heartbreaks, the layoffs, the hustle. Then came Eric. He wasn't her type, too smooth, too polished. But he listened. He remembered little things. He sent her playlists and made breakfast. He asked about her dreams and actually seemed to care. And when he talked about the new startup he was investing in, cryptocurrency meets supply chain logistics, it sounded brilliant. He convinced her to invest. "Just enough to feel it," he said, his fingers brushing hers. "We're going to build something real. Together." $146,000, every cent of her savings. She wired it one Wednesday morning before work, heart thumping, fingers shaking. She hadn't told anyone, not even her best friend. 2 weeks later, Eric disappeared. His number stopped working. His Instagram vanished. The emails bounced back. Mia's stomach dropped. She called the so-called startup, but the line was disconnected. She drove to the co-working space where he'd taken her for coffee. The receptionist had never heard of him. Police called it a domestic financial dispute. Her bank shrugged. Her friends were shocked but hesitant to say what they were all thinking. You were played. The shame was worse than the loss. She quit her job 2 days later. She couldn't focus. Every click of her keyboard felt like a reminder. She returned her lease car, boxed up her apartment, and booked the cheapest one-way ticket she could find, to Lisbon. She didn't know a soul there. That was the point. The first year was hell. She waited tables, taught English online, and cried every time her phone lit up with bills she couldn't pay. She doubted herself constantly, but in the quiet moments, the rage bubbled beneath the surface. Not just at Eric, but at herself, the system, the lies women are told about love and trust and starting over. In year 2, she started teaching herself code. Nights became study marathons, Python, SQL, front-end frameworks, anything to give her control again. By year 3, she had freelance clients. By year 4, she had a remote contract with a Berlin firm. And in year 5, Mia launched her own SaaS startup. She called it Reclaim. The app helped people track digital footprints of exes, of scam companies, of old accounts left vulnerable. It was born from her pain. But it grew, fast. VC money came knocking. She said no. This time, she was the one writing the terms. The launch made TechCrunch. She smiled at the headline, "From Ruin to Reclaim, One Woman's Journey to Fight Back Online Fraud." Mia looked in the mirror. No more tears. No more pity. 5 years after Eric vanished, she stepped off the plane in Chicago. Different name on the paperwork, different hair, different woman. She was back, and she wasn't here to forgive. They say time heals, but that's a lie, at least for Mia. Time didn't heal her. It sharpened her. Each day in London, she chipped away at the pain, reshaping it into purpose. She didn't run to escape. She left to rebuild. The first months were brutal. With only a few $1,000s in her name, Mia took up temp jobs, data entry, customer support, anything that paid. Her Cambridge apartment was a shoebox with paper-thin walls and unreliable heat, but she had Wi-Fi and silence, and that was enough. At night, she coded. She devoured books on cybersecurity, blockchain, algorithmic trading, any edge she could forge. Vengeance, she had decided, would require more than anger. It would take precision. By year 2, she had landed a contract gig at a small fintech startup. She kept her head down and delivered results. Her code was clean, her demeanor professional, her ambition invisible. She listened more than she spoke, absorbing everything about market manipulation, offshore assets, digital identities. Her former self, the one who had believed in love over logic, was dead and buried. Mia didn't date. She didn't make friends. She collected tools, skills, contacts, certifications. She learned to lie better, hide deeper, and plan farther. At night, she practiced facial expressions in the mirror. Calm, warm, deferential. She needed masks, many of them. Year 3 brought a breakthrough. Her freelance crypto tool, developed anonymously, went viral in certain underground forums. The code was tight, the UX sleek. Overnight, she was offered seed capital from a Singaporean fund that believed she was a team of 5. She smiled at that. They wanted results, and she had them. She registered her company under a pseudonym. She built a team, not of employees, but mercenaries in code. Remote devs, ethical hackers, privacy freaks. Together, they developed systems that sniffed out financial fraud, traced shell companies, and exposed invisible networks of wealth. Mia never showed her face. She was a ghost in the machine. By the end of year 4, her network touched 3 continents. She had access to Swiss accounts, SEC filings, and black market trade logs. She knew how money moved, and more importantly, how to follow it back to the hands that thought they were untouchable. And always, she kept tabs on him, Nathan Hale, the man who stole her money, her trust, her past. She watched him rise through LinkedIn posts and news articles, the golden entrepreneur of Silicon Valley, holding panels about ethics in tech while laundering millions. She built a dossier, screenshots, testimonies, leaked memos. She knew his shell corporations, his Cayman accounts, his mistress in Berlin. She even knew the make and model of the watch he wore when he lied to her the last time. As the 5th year dawned, Mia moved quietly. A new name, a new face even, courtesy of strategic hair dye, contacts, and wardrobe. The first ticket she bought in her new identity was one way, back to San Francisco, not to pick up the pieces, but to flip the board. Mia arrived in San Francisco under a soft fog, the skyline fractured through the taxi window like a dream she once had. The city hadn't changed much. The people still walked too fast, their earbuds in, their eyes locked on somewhere else. She blended in perfectly. Another tech expat returning from a digital pilgrimage. No one looked twice. Her new name was Elise Carrington. The passport was real, bought from a vendor in Warsaw who owed her a favor. The accent, polished British with a faint trace of northern France, was a result of years of conscious recalibration. She didn't just need to look different, she needed to be untraceable. The plan was already in motion. She'd spent the last 6 months orchestrating her re-entry from afar, opening a Delaware LLC, creating a legitimate-looking SaaS company, hiring a real but completely loyal CTO, and securing a tiny, stylish office in Soma. She even had a website, minimalist, buzzword-heavy, investor-friendly, all smoke, no mirrors. But the heart of the plan wasn't in code, it was human. Nathan Hale, the man who ruined her life, was no longer running a lean hustle in Palo Alto. He now sat on the board of 3 companies, chaired a Tech for Good think tank, and was engaged to a venture capitalist whose father once served in Congress. He had become the Silicon darling, which made him easier to reach. Mia started small. She attended mixers under her new name. She bought a pass to a Women in FinTech summit where Nathan was the keynote speaker. From a back row, she watched him on stage. the same smirk, the same watch. He hadn't changed, only she had. She smiled when he walked off stage, brushing past her without a second glance. Step 2. Proximity. She reached out to Nathan's COO under the guise of a B2B partnership. Their software, Finsight Analytics, claimed to offer cutting-edge fraud detection for private wealth firms. It was vaporware mostly, but the demo was slick, and the data it showed was legitimate, pulled from open sources, slightly enhanced, just enough to impress. A meeting was set. Mia walked into Hailtech like she belonged there. The receptionist offered her cucumber water. The walls were tastefully exposed brick and clean steel, startups trying to look grown up. She wore a charcoal pantsuit, sleek but forgettable, and carried a Mont Blanc notebook she'd never write in. Nathan wasn't at the meeting, but his data was. Every document they handed her, every access point they granted for integration review, Mia recorded it all. She wasn't after licensing deals, she was mapping their digital infrastructure. Hailtech had vulnerabilities. They used an outdated API library she had once reverse-engineered. Rookie mistake. By week 3, she had access to the company's test servers. By week 5, she had a clone of their internal dashboard, all under their nose. Then came the leak. An anonymous whistleblower sent a cache of Hailtech internal communications to a popular tech blog, redacted enough to avoid legal red flags, but damning enough to raise eyebrows. The blog ran a story, nothing massive, but enough to rattle Nathan's board. Mia watched the fallout from her tiny office across town. Nathan called a press conference. He denied everything. He looked tired. She looked radiant. It had begun. San Francisco hadn't changed much. The skyline still shimmered with hollow ambition, the startup still promised to change the world, and the coffee still cost more than it should. Mia returned like a phantom, slipping into the city that had once witnessed her ruin. She didn't visit old places or people. That Mia was gone. She moved into a minimalist loft in Soma, the kind with bare concrete walls and smart glass windows. Her neighbors didn't ask questions, and she didn't offer answers. She spent her days building a shell company, one designed to catch Nathan Hale like a spider web in a storm. Her new company, Verity Logic, appeared suddenly on the fintech scene with a bold promise: total financial transparency through AI-driven audits. It was disruptive, sleek, and oddly idealistic. Investors were intrigued. Industry veterans were skeptical, but Mia knew exactly how to bait Nathan. She hired a PR firm to whisper Verity Logic's name in the right ears. She ensured tech bloggers speculated about acquisition interest from bigger firms. The hype swelled. Within weeks, her platform gained traction among hedge funds who liked the idea of clean books, but didn't know Verity Logic was already crawling through their data. Mia didn't want money, she wanted leverage. And then, one morning, it came. A message pinged in her encrypted inbox. A venture group connected to Nathan Hale wanted a meeting. She smiled. The meeting was set at a boutique hotel in Palo Alto, the kind where deals were made over imported matcha and $90 cheese boards. Mia arrived early, dressed in the armor of success. Crisp suit, subtle jewelry, a watch more expensive than her first car. Her hair was darker now, her posture sharper. She was unreadable. Nathan didn't show. Instead, it was his senior advisor, a man named Clark, former McKinsey, all smiles and arrogance. "We love what you're doing," he said. "Verity Logic is exactly the kind of disruptor we believe in." Mia tilted her head. "You believe in disruption?" He chuckled. "Only when it's profitable." They danced for an hour. Clark offered partnerships, strategic investments, board seats. Mia nodded, asked thoughtful questions, feigned interest. Inside, she was already rewiring the wires of the trap. By month's end, Verity Logic announced a partnership with Hale Ventures. Nathan Hale, finally, was on the same playing field, but Mia wasn't playing, she was executing. The partnership was announced on TechCrunch with the usual fanfare: press photos, glowing quotes, buzzwords about innovation. Hale Ventures had just backed the future of financial clarity. Investors poured in. But what they didn't know was that the future came with receipts. Mia now had direct access to the digital underbelly of Hale Ventures. She embedded forensic tools within Verity Logic's integration points, capturing everything from suspicious transfers to internal memos. Every encrypted message, every buried PDF, every microtransaction passed through her hands first. It was worse than she imagined. Nathan wasn't just laundering money. He was manipulating IPOs, shorting companies he advised, paying politicians through shell foundations. He had built an empire on shadows, and Mia had mapped every inch of it. She compiled the evidence: 3 terabytes of corruption, treachery, and fraud. She shared it anonymously with investigative journalists, international regulators, and key whistleblowers in Nathan's circle. And then she waited. The collapse began slowly. A leaked report on Twitter, a suspicious SEC filing, an exposé on Wired. Within weeks, Hale Ventures was in free fall. Clients fled. Investors panicked. The DOJ opened a formal investigation. Nathan Hale's empire, once featured on magazine covers, now appeared under headlines like "Silicon Valley's Biggest Fraud." He tried to fight back, released statements, blamed rogue employees, denied knowledge, but the data didn't lie. And when the FBI raided his San Mateo estate, Mia stood by her window with a glass of red wine, watching the city lights flicker. She had done it, but she felt no joy, only silence. Mia had always thought vengeance would taste sweet, but when the news broke, Nathan Hale arrested, Verity Logic hailed as a savior, she felt empty. She sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through headlines. Tech Titan falls from grace. Whistleblower startup redefines corporate justice. Everyone wanted to know who was behind Verity Logic, but Mia remained in the shadows. Her lawyers ensured she retained full control while keeping her name buried beneath layers of legal insulation. She received offers, book deals, speaking gigs, even a Netflix adaptation. She declined them all. The real reward wasn't fame, it was agency. She used the profits to fund a new foundation focused on women in tech, especially those silenced or scammed by male-dominated firms. She built scholarship programs, hired formerly overlooked developers, mentored girls who reminded her of herself. One night, she walked past a bookstore and saw a biography of Nathan Hale on the discount shelf. She picked it up, flipped through it. His words, once intoxicating, now read like fiction. She left the book behind. At home, her cat curled on her lap. She opened her laptop and stared at a blinking cursor. A new idea was forming. Something bold, something honest. This time, not for revenge, but for revolution. Mia stood on the rooftop of the glass tower overlooking downtown San Francisco, the wind catching the hem of her coat like a banner. The building across the street, Hale Technologies HQ, glowed like a monument to fraud. Inside, chaos reigned. News vans clogged the street. Reporters shouted into microphones. Executives fled the building, some escorted by federal agents. Her final move had been elegant, quiet, devastating. Earlier that morning, she'd triggered the release of a trove of data, contracts, offshore accounts, whistleblower testimony, and internal communications, all linking Nathan Hale to embezzlement, tax fraud, and the laundering of millions through shell companies. The data dump was time-stamped, verified, and pre-briefed to major outlets. It included voices of former employees, investors, and even victims who never knew their life savings had been part of Hale's Ponzi empire. And it all led back to him. Nathan Hale was arrested just before noon. His face, pale, stunned, stripped of all his charm, was broadcast live. The world saw what Mia had known for years. Behind the charisma was a liar, a thief, a predator in designer suits. Mia didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She simply watched. There was no satisfaction in the fall itself, only in the fact that truth had finally caught up. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed for the sentencing. Mia sat in the back, hidden beneath a new haircut and sunglasses. Nathan barely looked up when the judge spoke of betrayal, systemic abuse, and deliberate exploitation. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. As the gavel struck, Mia exhaled. It wasn't vengeance she felt. It was freedom. Apex had grown beyond her wildest dreams. Once a shell company used for camouflage, it had now become a real beacon, an AI-powered platform that uncovered financial abuse and corruption. Nonprofits, investigators, and even governments used it to trace stolen money and protect the vulnerable. She gave her team equity, paid them well, shared her story, not all the gory details, but enough to build a culture of integrity. At company meetings, she sometimes stared out at the young developers, the engineers who reminded her of herself, hungry, naive, hopeful. She didn't warn them away from ambition. She taught them to anchor it in truth. One afternoon, Mia stood on the beach outside Monterey, wind in her hair, phone turned off. Dan had flown in from London, and they shared oysters and silence like old times. He never said, "I told you so." He didn't need to. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. Mia smiled. "I'm proud of me, too." Later that night, she opened her laptop and posted a final blog entry. It started with heartbreak, and it became war. "But I'm done fighting now. I didn't just bring him down, I built something better. For every woman who was ever deceived, for every voice that was silenced, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are the fire. And sometimes, the fire wins." She hit publish. The stars were out. The tide was coming in. Mia tossed a smooth stone into the waves and whispered to the wind, "Goodbye, Nathan." Then, turning toward the future, she walked away. Not broken, not bitter, but finally, beautifully free.